My son was arrested after his stepfather attacked him, so I showed up in uniform with receipts. Hi, I'm Tobias, 42, and 3 nights ago my son called me from a holding cell. Dad, I'm at the police station. My stepdad attacked me and filed a false report. I asked which officer. Sergeant Williams, he said. I said, sit tight. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't call my ex-wife. I showed up in uniform. Captain's bars polished. Class A blues crisp. When I walked into that precinct, Williams froze. Kevin, the man who hit my son, looked like he'd seen a ghost. Because he hadn't expected this. He expected to scare a teenager, not face a police captain with a file of receipts and 23 years of command presence. The call came in at 10:47 p.m. My shift had ended hours ago, but I was still at the kitchen table, reviewing case files, half eating a cold sandwich I no longer wanted. My phone buzzed, and the second I saw Tyler's name at that hour, I knew something was wrong. His voice was thin, shaking. I didn't do anything, Dad. Kevin just lost it. He started screaming when I got home late from practice, said I was disrespecting him. Then he grabbed me. I pushed back. Next thing I know, he's bleeding and I'm in cuffs. My blood went cold, but I stayed calm. Years on the force teach you how to set emotions aside. I grabbed my notepad and asked the only question that mattered. Which officer's handling it? Sergeant Martin Williams. Listen carefully. Don't talk to anyone else. Ask for your attorney if they push. Just sit tight. Okay. I didn't mean to hit him that hard, Dad. You didn't hit him. You defended yourself. I'm on my way. I drove the 30 minutes to the Riverside precinct in 18, uniform buttoned, metal straight, the kind of presence that turns heads without saying a word. I wasn't there as a father. I was there as the line between justice and convenience. The night officer, Delgado, recognized me instantly. Captain Hartley? We didn't know you were coming in tonight. I'm here about a case. My son, Tyler Hartley. She blinked. Yes, sir. Sergeant Williams is in interview room 2 with the complainant. Your son's in the holding area. I nodded and walked in like I owned the walls. Because for 6 years I had. I trained half the staff, signed half their evaluations. These halls were my second home. I spotted Tyler through the plexiglass window in processing. His left eye was swollen, his lips split. But what wrecked me more was how small he looked, 17 years old, wearing a varsity soccer hoodie, like some punk kid instead of the smartest, kindest kid I know. Dad, he whispered, voice cracking. I put a hand on his shoulder. I've got this. I meant it. I turned and walked toward interview room 2 like a storm in dress shoes. Through the window of interview room 2, I saw exactly what I expected. Kevin Branson sitting with a smug little ice pack pressed to his cheek, doing his best impression of an injured saint. Sergeant Williams was leaned over his notepad, nodding like he was getting the story of the year. I didn't knock. I opened the door and stepped inside. Williams looked up. He registered my bars first, then my face. Captain Hartley? He stood instinctively. Sir, I wasn't aware. I'm involved now. Kevin's face lost every ounce of color. He looked at me like the ceiling had just fallen in. Good. I'm Captain Tobias Hartley. The minor you're holding outside is my son. Williams cleared his throat. Yes, sir. Mr. Branson reported. I raised a hand. I've read the initial notes. I'm asking you directly, Sergeant, what injuries does my son have? Williams hesitated. Some swelling, minor cuts. Swelling, cuts, and a black eye that needs stitches, I corrected. Now tell me, did you check Mr. Branson's hands for injuries consistent with punching? Because I've seen Tyler's. Defensive wounds. Raw knuckles. That doesn't match the aggressor narrative. Kevin finally spoke. He came at me. You weren't there. No, I said calmly. But I know my son. And I know when an adult man is lying through his teeth. Kevin straightened, puffing up like he thought this was still his house to control. This is a conflict of interest. You made it one the second you laid a hand on my kid. Williams opened his mouth like he might push back. I cut him off with a glance and set a folder on the table. Here's what you don't know, Sergeant. Over the past 6 months, Tyler's told me about incidents. Bruises he wouldn't explain. Grabs he called accidents. He was protecting his mother. But I wasn't ignoring it. I documented everything. Kevin scoffed. That's a lie. Is it? I slid a printed screenshot across the table. It was a faked image, yes, Tyler never sent a picture, but Kevin didn't know that. And the look in his eyes told me he wasn't sure what else I might have. Uncertainty is a beautiful thing when you're dealing with a bully. I turned to Williams. Are you planning to finish this investigation or just process a scared teenager to save paperwork? Williams swallowed. No, sir. I'll have the EMT assess Tyler's injuries and take a full statement. Kevin stood up suddenly, chest puffed. You think this is over? I want a lawyer. Good, I said. So do I. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only Kevin could hear. If you ever touch my son again, I won't need the badge. But lucky for you, I still believe in due process. Kevin's hands were shaking now. He tried to hold my stare and failed. Williams cleared his throat. Captain, we'll begin the formal interview with Tyler. And I'll be calling Detective Shaw from Domestic Violence for a consult. Do that, I said. I'll be in the waiting room. Tyler wasn't going to spend one more second being treated like the problem. Not while I was wearing this uniform. Tyler looked up when I came back into the waiting area. The raw tension in his shoulders hadn't eased, but his eyes were clearer now, like he finally believed I wasn't going to let this play out in silence. They're going to take your statement now, I told him, keeping my tone calm. Sergeant Williams and an EMT. They'll document everything. He nodded. Is Kevin still here? In another room. Rattled. You did nothing wrong, Tyler. Tell them exactly what happened. No embellishments, no edits to protect anyone's feelings. Just facts. He hesitated. What if I say the wrong thing? You won't. Because the truth doesn't need rehearsals. It holds up on its own. Williams appeared moments later, a little less sure of himself than before, but professional. He gestured to the hallway. Tyler, if you're ready. My son stood, straightened his spine like he just remembered he was 6 feet 1 inch, and followed him out. I watched them go, then sat back in the chair and folded my hands. I'd been in hundreds of precincts over the years, but I'd never waited like this. I wasn't a cop tonight. I was a father pacing inside his own skin. An hour crawled by. 2 officers passed, nodding. Delgado brought me coffee I didn't ask for. I thanked her with a tight smile. I wasn't there for caffeine. I was there to make sure the system didn't eat my kid. Finally, Williams returned. Tyler was behind him, looking worn but steadier. He gave a full statement. Williams said. EMT documented everything. And Detective Shaw reviewed the photos. She's recommending we classify Kevin's report as unfounded and open a new file for domestic assault, on Tyler's behalf. I nodded. That's the right call. Williams glanced at Tyler, then back at me. Sir, off the record. I want to apologize. For what? For believing Kevin too quickly. I should have taken a closer look before I pressured your son into a confession. I let the silence sit just long enough to sting. Don't apologize to me, I said. Apologize to every teenager who's ever walked into a precinct and been treated like a criminal because the adult had a louder story. He swallowed hard and nodded. Understood. As he walked away, I turned to Tyler. You okay? He exhaled slowly. Not really. But better than before. We're going home. I'm not going back to that house. I know. I meant my place. For the first time since I'd walked in, Tyler gave me a half-smile. Thanks for showing up, Dad. I looked him in the eye. Always, kid. Every damn time. We drove in silence, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Tyler sat in the passenger seat with an ice pack pressed to his eye, watching the city pass by like he wasn't quite convinced it was real. I'd seen that look before, on victims trying to piece together how the hell they got from normal to emergency in 5 minutes flat. When we pulled into the underground garage at my apartment, he said quietly, Is Mom gonna believe me? The question punched harder than anything Kevin threw. I honestly don't know, I admitted. She's always had a hard time admitting when she's wrong. Especially about people. He gave a small nod like he'd expected that answer but still hoped I'd say something else. I handed him the guest room key as we stepped into the elevator. Showers stocked. Toothbrush under the sink. You can use anything in the fridge except the last slice of cheesecake. That's non-negotiable. He smiled barely. Noted. 20 minutes later, he emerged with wet hair, wearing an old Academy t-shirt of mine that hung past his waist. He looked younger somehow. Less like the tall, Near-adult version of my son and more like the kid who used to fall asleep with his head on my shoulder during movie nights. I ordered pizza. He ate 2 slices like he hadn't tasted food in a week. Then, finally, he talked. Kevin's been worse lately. Ever since Mom started traveling more for work. He's got this thing where he picks fights over nothing, how long I'm in the shower, whether I said hi loud enough when I came home. Then it gets physical. I didn't interrupt. I just listened, every word adding to the case file already forming in my head. Tonight he was drunk. Started yelling about how I think I'm better than him. I tried to walk away, but he grabbed my arm and spun me around. Said I had to look a man in the eye when he's talking. Then he shoved me. I clenched my jaw. You said something then? I told him to leave me alone. He got in my face, called me a little punk, and said I was just like my father. Then he threw the first punch. Got you in the eye? Yeah. I blocked the second one and swung back. My forearm caught his face. He wears those thick glasses, remember? Pretty sure that's what cut him. That tracked. I'd seen injuries like that before, scratches from frames during a scuffle, easily mistaken for defensive wounds unless you were looking closely. Then what? He tripped on the coffee table. I ran to my room, locked the door. He banged on it for like 10 minutes, yelling stuff I couldn't even understand. Then it got quiet. Next thing I knew, cops were knocking. And Kevin spun his story first. Always the first one who talks. Always trying to control the narrative. Does your mom know about the earlier incidents? Tyler hesitated. Some. But she always said Kevin was under a lot of stress. That I should try not to set him off. I think she didn't want to admit she messed up marrying him. I wanted to scream. But I'd seen this before, smart women with blind spots, men like Kevin who weaponize stress and twist it into justification. I believe you, I said. And now the system does too. He leaned back on the couch, breathing a little easier. But the weight on his shoulders wasn't gone yet. You're staying here for now, I told him. Tomorrow, Detective Shaw will call. She's opening a formal case. What about Kevin? He's not walking away from this. You have my word. Tyler nodded slowly. I'm tired, Dad. Go get some sleep. He stood, then paused at the hallway. Thanks for showing up the way you did. In uniform, I mean. I met his eyes. Sometimes that uniform opens doors people try to slam shut. He went to bed. And I sat in the dark, staring at the message that had just buzzed onto my phone. It was from Denise. Kevin said you ambushed him? That Tyler's lying. That this is all a misunderstanding. Please call me. I'm scared. I didn't reply. Not yet. I stared at Denise's message for a long time, phone resting in my palm like it might bite me. I could hear her voice in the text, tired, confused, teetering between panic and denial. She'd always been good at finding excuses for people who didn't deserve them. But this time? This time I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story. I texted back one line. Call me when you're ready to listen. Not before. The next morning, Detective Shaw showed up at my apartment with a tablet, a notepad, and the kind of expression I've only seen on the real ones, the detectives who've walked into too many quiet houses that should have been safe. She took Tyler's full statement again, recorded this time. Photographed his injuries with care. Took note of the bruising patterns. She asked smart questions. Didn't rush him. Didn't flinch when he talked about the worst parts. When he finished, she closed her tablet and looked at me. We're going to open a case against Kevin Branson. Aggravated assault on a minor. Attempted false reporting. Based on what you've told me and what Tyler's shared, this won't be a hard case to prosecute. Thank you, I said. No need, she replied. This is the job. An hour after she left, Denise finally called. I picked up on the second ring. Jack, she said. I've been crying all night. Not the person who needs comfort right now. She didn't argue. Progress. I talked to Kevin. She continued. He said Tyler came at him out of nowhere. That he's been aggressive for months. I inhaled sharply. And what does the evidence say, Denise? You know, Tyler's injuries, the bruises, the police photos, the statements. What does all that tell you? Silence. Then, it says Kevin's lying? Yes. It does. She took a shaky breath. I didn't want to believe it. I kept telling myself it wasn't that bad. That Kevin just had a temper. But Tyler's been walking on eggshells in his own home and I looked away. That's what abusers count on. Her voice cracked. What do I do now? You put your son first. Finally. You file for divorce. You press charges if the DA allows. You testify if it goes to court. And most importantly, you protect him, because next time, there might not be a black eye. There might be a hospital bed. There was a long pause. Then she said, Can I talk to Tyler? I knocked on the guest room door and asked. He said yes. I left them alone for 20 minutes. When he came out, he didn't say what she'd said, only that she cried. A lot. And said she was sorry. Over and over. She wants me to come home eventually, he said. But only if Kevin's gone. And do you believe her? He paused. I want to. I really do. I nodded. Then let's give her the chance to prove it. That night, I forwarded everything, photos, statements, the text from Kevin that read, This isn't over. To Detective Shaw. She replied within the hour. Thanks, Captain. We're filing charges tomorrow. Tyler slept like a rock that night. First full night's rest he'd had in weeks, maybe months. Me? I stayed up and polished my boots. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to be ready. This time, we weren't waiting for Kevin to make the next move. We were. 3 days later, we sat in a conference room at the main precinct, Tyler, me, and Denise on one side of the table, Detective Shaw on the other. It felt like a courtroom without the wood panels and gavel, only the slow, steady unraveling of a truth we already knew. Mr. Branson has been charged with assault on a minor, Shaw said, flipping through the folder, and with filing a false police report. Given his lack of prior record, the DA is willing to offer a plea, 2 years probation, mandatory anger management, and a 5-year restraining order. Denise's hand trembled as she turned to Tyler. I'm sorry. I should have listened the first time you told me something was wrong. Tyler didn't say anything at first. Just stared at her, eyes searching for something real in her voice. You always told me not to overreact, he said. That he was just stressed. That it would get better. I was wrong, she whispered. And I can't undo it. But I'm divorcing him. He moved out yesterday. He won't come near you again. I promise. He looked at her for a long moment, then finally nodded. Okay. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the start of it. After the meeting, Denise asked to speak with me alone. Tyler waited by the car while I lingered in the hallway with the woman I used to call my wife. I know we didn't end well, she said. And I know I failed as a mother in ways I'll never stop regretting. But thank you. For showing up. For being the kind of parent I wasn't. I'm his father, I said simply. I don't get points for doing what I'm supposed to do. She smiled sadly. Still. You saved him. And me, in a way. I didn't save anyone, I replied. I just made sure the system did its damn job for once. She wiped her eyes. You were always better at seeing people than I was. No, I said. Just better at listening when they were in pain. Outside, Tyler sat on the hood of my car, squinting into the winter sunlight. You okay? I asked. He shrugged. Getting there. We drove back to my apartment in silence, a good silence this time. The kind that doesn't need to fill space to feel solid. That weekend, Tyler returned to soccer practice. His coach welcomed him back like nothing had changed, but the team noticed the bruises. One of the seniors clapped him on the back and said, Whoever gave you that shiner better not be walking. He's not, Tyler replied. And that was it. He focused on school. His grades held steady. His laughter came back slowly, like muscle memory. He didn't flinch when the doorbell rang. He stopped double-checking the locks. Meanwhile, I kept my class A uniform cleaned and pressed in the back of my closet. Because now I understood, sometimes a uniform isn't about authority. It's about protection. It's about showing up with enough force behind you to shift the entire trajectory of a story that was being written wrong. Kevin Branson had tried to rewrite my son's life with a lie. He didn't count on me bringing the whole damn truth in behind me. Spring melted into summer, and for the first time in months, the house didn't feel like a bunker. Tyler started leaving his bedroom door open again. He joked about normal things. He slept with both earbuds in instead of one, like he wasn't afraid of what might happen while he was unconscious. Healing, I learned, isn't a grand moment. It's 100 small ones you almost don't notice, until suddenly you do. One afternoon, I came home early from a precinct meeting to find him in the kitchen, shirtless, making grilled cheese and humming something out of tune. There was a physics textbook open on the table. He looked up, startled, like he was caught stealing. "What?" he said, suspicious. "Nothing," I replied. "You're just happy." He blinked, then laughed. "Yeah, I guess I kind of am." I sat across from him and watched him eat like it wasn't the first time I'd seen him smile in weeks. It wasn't, but this one reached his eyes. "Any thoughts about next year?" I asked. "College?" he said through a mouthful of cheese. "East Coast, maybe. Engineering or pre-law. Somewhere near the ocean." "Why the ocean?" he shrugged. "Because people can scream into it, and it just swallows it whole." I didn't know whether to laugh or worry, so I did both. A few days later, Denise stopped by. It was awkward, civil. She brought Tyler's mail and an old hoodie he left behind. She didn't try to linger. As she left, she turned to me. "I've got a lot of ground to make up." "You do," I said. "But you've also got time. Don't waste it." That night, Tyler showed me a photo he'd printed, him and his team, state semifinals, muddy cleats and all. He looked proud, beat up, alive. "I'm gonna hang this up in my dorm," he said. "When I get there. I'll help you move." I told him. "You better," he said, smirking. Later, I stood in the hallway, looking into the guest room that had become his room. It wasn't just a place to crash anymore. It had shape now. Identity. A life that had almost been derailed but wasn't. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I let myself believe something simple and dangerous. He's going to be okay. Kevin never tried to contact him again. The restraining order held. Denise filed the divorce papers. Shaw closed the case officially with a signed confession and plea from Kevin's attorney. No courtroom drama. No appeal. Just a quietly executed piece of justice that stuck. And me? I went back to work. Same badge. Same title. Same stack of paperwork that never quite got shorter. But now, I kept a second folder in my desk. Labeled personal. Inside was Tyler's statement. The EMT photos. The text Kevin sent me in the dark. And the printout of the email I'd sent to Shaw at 2:13 a.m. that night. Evidence. Truth. Fireproof. Because I never wanted to forget what happens when a man shows up not just as a cop, but as a father. Summer stretched long and quiet, and for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for something bad to happen. Tyler settled into the rhythm of teenage freedom, late-night movies, sleeping in until noon, soccer practice that bled into diner runs with his friends. It was exactly what I wanted for him, boredom with a side of belonging. He got a part-time job at a sporting goods store, spent his first paycheck on a ridiculous pair of sneakers, and grinned like he'd bought a piece of the moon. One night, he came home at 11:30 and found me passed out on the couch in full uniform, TV remote still in my hand. "Rough shift?" he asked, shaking me awake. 3 DUIs and a guy who thought he could park his motorcycle inside a Wendy's," I muttered. He handed me a bottle of water and a protein bar from the kitchen without being asked. "Old man needs fuel," he said. I laughed, groaned, and accepted it. We were falling into something better than survival. We were building normal. Denise, to her credit, didn't disappear. She didn't pretend everything was fine either. She called every few days, came to 2 of Tyler's games, and started therapy, real therapy, not the polite, once-a-month kind people attend just to say they're doing something. "I've got to figure out why I let someone like Kevin into our lives," she said one afternoon, standing in my doorway like she had something heavy in her pocket. "I think you already are," I replied. She nodded. "I just want to be someone Tyler can trust again. That takes time. And consistency." She left a stack of Tyler's old yearbooks on the entry table. He might want to remember who he was before all this. That night, I found him flipping through the pages, pausing on photos of him at 13, 14, laughing, arms thrown around teammates and classmates, and kids he hadn't talked to since. "I used to be a lot louder," he said quietly. "You still are," I said. "You're just carrying more now." He didn't respond right away, but when he did, it broke me a little. "I thought you'd be disappointed in me. For not fighting harder. For letting it go on as long as I did." I set down my drink. "Tyler, let me be very clear, you did everything right. You stayed kind when someone tried to break that out of you. You told the truth when it mattered. You survived something no one your age should ever have to. And when you called me? That wasn't weakness." I leaned forward. "That was the strongest damn thing I've ever seen," He didn't cry. But he stood up, crossed the room, and hugged me with both arms like he wasn't just hugging his father, but anchoring himself to something real. "I'm gonna be okay, Dad," he said. "I know," I told him. "But even when you're not alone." Thanksgiving came fast that year. Tyler flew home 2 days early, duffel bag over his shoulder, taller than I remembered, and somehow quieter too, but not from sadness. From peace. We picked him up from the airport, Denise and I together. Not awkward, not exactly warm either. A kind of truce that felt earned, not forced. She hugged him too long. He let her. "Still drink that weird mint tea?" he asked when we got home. "I upgraded to weird chamomile," I replied, tossing him the remote. "Still hog the couch?" "Obviously." We stayed up watching some terrible movie either of us liked just because it was tradition. He told me about his professors, his friends, a girl named Lila who might be more than a friend. I didn't press. Just smiled and said, "Don't let her beat you at trivia unless you really like her." Thanksgiving dinner was smaller this year. No extended family. No tension pretending to be gratitude. Just us. Tyler carved the turkey. Denise made the stuffing from scratch like she always swore she hated doing. She didn't complain once. After dinner, Tyler pulled out his laptop and opened a file labeled "Summer Essay, Unsubmitted." He slid it across the table. "Wanted you to read this." It was a personal narrative. His Common App essay draft he never turned in. It was about the night Kevin filed that false report. The station. My uniform. How it felt to see me walk in and know, without question, that he wasn't alone. That night, I realized safety isn't a place. It's a person. It's someone who shows up before you can ask. Someone who believes you out loud. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. When I finished reading, I looked up. "I couldn't submit it," he said. "Felt too raw. Too heavy." "You could have. It's the best thing I've ever read." "I didn't want to lead with trauma," he said. "I want to be more than what happened to me." I nodded slowly. "You already are." He sat back, folded his arms behind his head like he was stretching. "I think I want to be a lawyer," he said. "Not the save the whales kind. The kind that keeps people from falling through the cracks." I smiled. "You want to be the door that stays open." "Exactly." That night, after everyone went to bed, I walked out to the porch and sat with the last of the apple pie and a blanket over my knees like some old man. I watched the street. The lights. The kind of quiet that meant no one was fighting behind closed doors. My phone buzzed once. A message from Detective Shaw. "Branson completed court-mandated counseling. Still no violations. We'll monitor until the restraining order ends. Just thought you'd want to know." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed, "Thanks. But I already do." Then I deleted the thread. Some stories don't need sequels. Some just need to end, quietly, and with the right people sitting safely at your table. Winter settled in sharp that year. The kind of cold that makes everything quieter, like even the wind has the decency to keep its voice down. Tyler was back at school, midterms piling up, snow in the forecast. We texted most days. Nothing big, just, "You good?" / "Yeah, you?" kind of stuff. But it was steady. Reliable. Then one night, just after midnight, I got a message. "Dad, dorm across the hall just had a situation. Girl was screaming. RA called campus security." I couldn't sleep after. Just reminded me of before. I didn't reply right away. I knew what he needed wasn't a fix, it was presence. So I typed, "That feeling? It's your gut remembering. Doesn't mean you're back there. Means you're paying attention." A few seconds later, he responded, "You ever stop hearing it? The echoes?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then typed, "No. But they get quieter when you build louder things over them." No reply for a minute. Then, "Thanks. Love you." I sat with that for a while. Not because it surprised me, but because he'd said it first. The next day, I mailed him a small box. No big speech. Just a silver key on a chain. The spare to my apartment. A note tucked inside. "In case you ever need to come home without asking." 3 days later, he called. Not text, called. I got the box. "You don't have to use it," I said. "Just know it's real." He was quiet a second, then said, "That's kind of the whole thing, isn't it?" Just knowing someone believes you without a speech. I laughed. Getting profound over there. I'm around therapists now. I'm absorbing wisdom like osmosis. We both laughed. But under it was something steadier. He wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Kevin. Not of what had happened. But more importantly, not of himself. That's the thing no one tells you about recovery. It's not just getting away from the pain. It's learning you're allowed to be whole again. March came in loud, wind off the bay, sirens slicing through the early dusk, and Tyler texting me mid-soccer practice asking if I could proofread his essay on restorative justice. He'd written about cycles, how harm repeats until someone decides to break the pattern, not with punishment, but with truth and boundaries. You realize this is basically your origin story? I texted back. Yours too, he replied. A week later, he visited for spring break. No dramatic entrance this time, just dropped his bag at the door and immediately raided the fridge like he'd never left. Your groceries got sad without me. My bank account did too. We went to a diner the next morning, same booth, same waitress, same burnt coffee Tyler always pretended to hate but finished anyway. Halfway through his pancakes, he looked up. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't called you that night? I didn't answer right away. I just folded my napkin slowly, watched the people at the booth behind him. A young dad cutting pancakes for a toddler. A woman rubbing sleep from her eyes like it still clung to her spine. Every single day, I said. He nodded. Me too. Then, sometimes I feel guilty. Like I got saved and someone else didn't. I leaned forward, voice low. You didn't get saved. You fought. You told the truth when it cost you comfort. That's not luck. That's courage. He blinked hard. Looked down. Yeah. Okay. Later that week, he sat in on a shift with me, ride-along paperwork approved, vest fitted, radio clipped to his belt. He watched me handle a domestic call, nothing volatile, just a couple mid-argument about rent and blame and 15 years of things unsaid. He didn't speak until we got back into the car. Is this what it was like for you, every day? Some days worse. He looked out the window, then said, I think I still want to be a lawyer. But maybe not courtroom. Maybe something earlier in the chain. Prevention instead of cleanup. I smiled. Sounds like a man with a plan. Sounds like a kid who doesn't want to be a statistic. You never were. That night, he crashed on the couch even though his bed was made. Said the TV helped him sleep. I let it run. Just like I let the porch light burn long after he'd closed his eyes. Summer break came early. Tyler finished his finals in a flurry of all-nighters, coffee-fueled study groups, and a physics professor who graded like a bitter X. He came home lighter this time, no tension in his jaw, no careful glances at doorframes like he was expecting someone to slam through one. I picked him up from the station. He tossed his duffel in the trunk, slid into the passenger seat, and said, So, how's the quiet life? 3 stolen lawn gnomes and 1 woman convinced her cat is being harassed by a neighbor's drone. He grinned. God, I missed home. We fell into rhythm again, late dinners, shared leftovers, fights over who left the AC at 68, and debates about the best crime films of the last decade. He was wrong, obviously. Prisoners clears. Then one afternoon, we took a walk around the neighborhood, something we used to do when he was younger. He pointed at houses and guessed which ones had drama behind the blinds. That one? Emotional affair. 3rd house down? Secret crypto cult. Stop watching so many documentaries, I muttered. We stopped at the park bench near the duck pond where he used to feed stale bread to pigeons. Now it was coffee and big questions. He said, Do you ever think Kevin will come back? I shook my head. No. Not unless he wants to violate a restraining order and get a fast track back to court. But if he did, I'd handle it. Legally. Completely. And without hesitation. He nodded. Then, I'm not scared of him anymore. But sometimes I still think I should have done more. Fought back harder. You did what you had to. And you walked away. That's not weakness, Tyler. That's survival with intent. He was quiet for a while. The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the path. A kid screamed in the distance, chasing a soccer ball too big for his feet. Then Tyler said, I think I'm going to write about it. The whole thing. Not for school. Just for me. Maybe for other kids who are still in it. I looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't the boy in the holding cell anymore. Wasn't the kid with the bruised eye and shaking hands. He was the man I raised, steady and intentional, writing his own next chapter. You should, I said. Because your voice, your version, it matters. And maybe, just maybe, it saves someone else. By August, the house had changed. Not physically, same creaky cabinet hinge, same dent in the hallway from when Tyler kicked his soccer ball inside despite every warning. But the energy was different. Less guarded. More lived in. He started volunteering twice a week at a local youth center. Said he didn't want to preach, just be there. They don't need a hero, he told me. They just need someone who doesn't look away. One afternoon, I stopped by unannounced, brought donuts for the staff and a coffee for Tyler. He was in the corner, crouched down talking to a kid who couldn't have been more than 12. The boy's body language screamed trust issues, arms crossed, jaw tight, but Tyler didn't flinch. Just sat, level with him. Listening like the world depended on it. I stayed by the door. Didn't interrupt. Didn't need to. That night over dinner, he told me the boy's name. No details, no case specifics, just the weight of a story that sounded too familiar. He said no one believes him, Tyler said, pushing rice around his plate. Said the cops came, and his stepdad had a clean shirt and the right words. And now he's the liar. My throat tightened. Did you tell him your story? He shook his head. Not yet. Just told him I believed him. That was enough. It hit me then, the quiet, gut-punch truth of it. Tyler had become the thing I'd tried to be for him. Not the rescuer. Not the fixer. The proof. That survival was possible. That someone would listen. That fear didn't get the final say. He went back to school the next week with a different posture. Not just taller, grounded. Like he knew exactly who he was now, and didn't need to explain it to anyone. The night before he left, I found him in the kitchen writing something in a leather journal. I didn't ask what. He looked up, closed the book, and said, "This isn't a comeback story." No. No. Comebacks are for people who lost something. I'm not getting back to who I was. I'm building who I'm supposed to be. I nodded, smiled. That sounds like someone who's writing his own ending. He grinned. Not yet. 2 months into the fall semester, I got a call from Tyler on a Thursday night. Dad, he said, voice tight but not panicked. Kevin tried to message me. The sentence hit like a stun grenade. He went on. It was through an old gaming account. He used a burner handle, but I recognized the way he types. Same weird punctuation. Same way of capitalizing random words. Did he threaten you? No. Just said, hope you're doing well. We should talk sometime. Be the bigger man. I closed my eyes. That sentence, those words, be the bigger man, were a trap disguised as civility. The oldest move in the abuser playbook. Did you take a screenshot? I asked. Yeah. I didn't respond. Already emailed Detective Shaw. Pride hit me harder than anger ever could have. You did everything right, kid. Still shook me up a little. Of course it did. That's normal. You're not made of stone. I'm not scared of him. Just mad. Good. I said. Anger's not weakness. It's what teaches you where your line is. We stayed on the phone for 20 more minutes. Long enough to talk it out. Long enough for his voice to settle back into itself. By morning, Shaw had already responded. She contacted Kevin's parole officer and flagged the account. A warning was issued. Any further contact, and he'd violate the terms of his plea deal. 3 days later, Tyler sent me a photo. He'd taken the conversation with Shaw, printed it out, and pinned it to his dorm wall, right above a quote I didn't recognize. It read, "You are not responsible for the version of you that someone else imagined they could break." Underneath it, a sticky note in his handwriting. No more pretending. No more peacekeeping at my own expense. I stared at it for a long time. This wasn't the boy I'd rescued in a holding cell. This was a man setting fire to the old rules and writing new ones in his own ink. Tyler came home for winter break with a duffel bag, a new haircut, and that subtle edge in his voice that only shows up after you've truly chosen yourself, like he'd spent the semester putting old ghosts in a drawer and finally locked it. He threw his bag down, flopped onto the couch, and said, "This place still smells like cheap aftershave and microwaved burritos. Welcome home," I replied, tossing him a soda. Denise came by a few days later, nervous but trying. She brought cookies, offered help with dinner, even laughed at one of Tyler's awful puns without faking it. It was awkward at first, but then they found a rhythm. Not quite mother and son like before, but two people quietly stitching something back together, thread by thread. Later that night, Tyler asked, "Do you think Mom really changed?" I took a long breath. "I think she wants to. And that's a start. But it's on her to do the work, not on you to believe her before she earns it." He nodded slowly. "Yeah. That feels true." On New Year's Eve, we skipped the parties and made tacos at home. Just the two of us, watching bad action movies and mocking every explosion that didn't follow the laws of physics. At midnight, he raised his root beer bottle and said, "To being the problem." I raised mine. "To being the solution." He grinned. "I like that better." He left for school the next day, duffel packed, head high. Before he got into the car, he turned to me. "You know I don't just call you when things are bad, right?" "I know. But if it ever gets bad again, I will." "You won't even have to," I said. "I'll already be there." He smiled. And in that smile, I saw the truth of it all. He wasn't surviving anymore. He was living. Spring came with its usual chaos: budgets, case reviews, a dozen retirements I had to pretend I wasn't jealous of. But one morning, I walked into the precinct and found a letter on my desk. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Tyler. He'd been accepted into a graduate program for public policy with a focus on youth advocacy. Full scholarship. His final sentence read, "You showed me what justice looks like when it wears a human face. Now I want to be that face for someone else." I sat there for a long time, just holding the letter. I don't think I saved my son that night. I think he saved himself, and gave me the privilege of standing beside him when he did. Kevin is a footnote now. Tyler is the story. And me? I still keep my Class A uniform pressed and ready. Not for power. For presence. Because sometimes showing up doesn't fix everything. But it changes everything. And every once in a while, it saves someone who thought they had to fight alone. Law and public policy. Ivy League. Full ride. He downplayed it, of course. "It's not that big of a deal," he said over the phone, like he hadn't just rewritten the ending to every story Kevin ever tried to brand him with. That weekend, he drove home. Same beat-up car. Same crooked grin. But something had changed. The air around him was still. Unshaken. He handed me a folder, his final undergrad thesis. The title, "Restoration After Ruin, A Framework for Survivor-Centered Justice." I read the dedication first. "For the man who walked into a precinct not as a captain, but as a father who didn't blink. You didn't rescue me. You reminded me I was worth rescuing." I didn't say anything for a while. Just closed the folder and looked at my son. "You did this," I said. He nodded. "Because you did what dads are supposed to do. You showed up. You believed me." The next morning, I hung a new frame in my office. Not an award. Not a commendation. Just Tyler's note. Simple. Final. The badge I wear never made me his hero. Believing him did. Protecting him did. Showing up, not as a cop, but as his father, that made all the difference. And if I'm ever called again, day or night, uniform or not, I'll be there. Always. Because that's the job that matters most. Not captain. Not officer. Dad. And I'll answer that call every time.